So it's International Women's Day, the focus of our retreat, a day of celebration to celebrate women. In her book, Budding Lotus in the West, Ni Yen Do Tran, who's on retreat with us and is becoming a Dharma friend, she's talked to us about monastic rules that have kept women down over many, many years, and the harm that's been done to females by male monastics, to nuns.
And there's an irony here, and that's that it's really tragic and in our eyes that the Buddhist monks and many Buddhists take precepts, their vows, their strong intention to do no harm. Might not even, this might apply to a spider or an insect. Do not harm a spider or an insect. Very common. Yet still they believe a transgression has occurred when a nun criticizes a monk. Just think about that. It's a transgression if a nun even criticizes a monk.
Right. And those precepts or vows or strong intentions that they take, that the monks take, the nuns take, and many Buddhists take, we don't recite those precepts before every retreat or before every session, but we point to them throughout the teachings and in the conversations that we have with people about their meditation practice. We're looking for those precepts of doing no harm, because really all of the precepts, that's a basic idea, is to not harm.
So Linda found this podcast on Tricycle, a Buddhist publication and website, by Katie Butler. And the title of it was The Buddhist Ethics of Abortion. And we felt like she did some very nuanced and deep thinking about the topic, having had a couple of abortions herself. We're not going to address the topic of abortion per se, but more about the precepts and harm. So here's a quote from Katie Butler. I think the fundamental meaning of all 5 basic lay precepts is to not harm, to do no harm. But the world is so complex. So my feeling is the way I and everyone else works with the precepts in their lives is taking the North Star of where you're trying to head, which is in the direction of not harming, and see how you can do the best within the circumstances of your life. Now, of course, we like that quote because it speaks to conditionality and not such high ideals.
Yeah, we also like the quote because it speaks to harm reduction, that harm reduction is a first step and a second step and a third step, and there's a lot of steps in the direction of reducing harm.
Now, harm reduction, that terminology, as I am aware of, it came into our lingo with substance abuse. And also, it was there was a very strong thing during the AIDS epidemic, because people realized that setting such a high goal of complete abstinence when you're addicted to alcohol or drugs and always practicing safe sex was unrealistic for many people. So that sets something up. If you know you can't do it all the time and you think that that is really the goal, safe sex all the time, abstinence all the time, it's so easy to just like give up. So there's no way I can do it. So why bother? So I'll drink and drug and do sex the way I most enjoy it. But that's not so that's where harm reduction came in. Maybe it's good enough to do less. Maybe that's a step along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And a member of our Sangha here in Portland, she was the first person, she was the executive director of an agency, and she set up the first needle exchange program in the country. I'm so proud of her. And I actually came to work for her when that was all just getting underway. And she got so much kickback. This was so, by the powers that be. Think this might have been the Reagan administration. this was not okay to be handing out syringes. Not
Right.
okay.
Right, right. It didn't make sense to them. And so here's this new radical idea of handing out needles, syringes. And it's not only new and radical, it's done by a woman. So I just kind of can see the kickback being, really harsh. And again, the opposite of doing no harm. So I'm going to kind of translate this into us. Like, if we're not careful, high goals can lead to further violence against ourselves and against others. These kickbacks have a lot of aggression to them. Scapegoating, which is another way to handle something that is aversive to us, blaming or pointing fingers or really targeting one group of people. In this case, in the monastic case, which is nuns or women. But this is the opposite of do no harm. And yet it can be done in the name of doing no harm. So it's so complex and complicated at times.
And challenging harm when we see it, it is not easy. And I just want to, thank Nee for writing this book where she really challenged this harm. She really challenges in the book, in her book. And it seems like she's passionate about it, but it doesn't look so easy from my point of view.
Yeah. I have seen and written, when you read the book, you can hear her voice. And we use a kind of Australian word. She's very cheeky. There's just a way, she's not going to let it go. Like, who wants to keep pointing fingers to this very topic? She does. And she's a champion in that respect. So with the reflective meditation practice, I mean, this really is one reason we don't set high ideals. This is kind of filling out some of our reasoning around what high ideals can set up. And we have our own kind of antenna, listening for ourselves and others when we're holding ourselves to a high bar, and what we do to try to keep up with that high bar or jump over it. And often it's feeling like a failure. Often it's critical thinking and voices that you're saying to yourself. You don't even realize how harsh you are when you're trying to really reach too far.
So each step, we're really looking with harm reduction again about, step by step, not expecting to be completely free of harm. But we hopefully each step in that harm, each step along the way in harm reduction actually wears away the impulse. So it's a really different process rather than reaching for the best, the absolute perfect thing. We're saying you take a step and actually you hang out there maybe for a while there and you don't even have the impulse to do that anymore. So it's like it's done. And then you take a next step and it's not as linear as that metaphor makes it sound, but maybe that is helpful in some ways, that metaphor.
But you're getting at, it starts to feel better and good to not do harm. Like, and that's then becomes the North Star that you're following.
Right. Exactly. It feels better rather than I should do this or I want to be a good person or the teachings tell me to do this. Or, it's more that, this is what feels good. This is what, right.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to apply this, what we're talking about, to patriarchal Buddhism, a patriarchal world. And our aspiration in choosing this topic is that this retreat, these talks, our being together, is a step towards wearing away a bit of those patriarchal principles.
And that's perhaps as good as it gets, as we can take this little baby step in that direction. But here we are doing it.
Yeah, and for today on this, holiday, I actually kind of join Nee's passion and enthusiasm, and I think you do too, Nellie, to really bring this topic to light.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
So that ends our talk. And it brings us up to our 30 minutes of silent meditation. So